The Economic Community of West African States has declared a regional state of emergency, marking what analysts are calling the most dramatic shift in West Africa's security landscape in over 2 decades. The announcement came as the bloc warned that the region has now reached what officials are describing as high-risk status, driven by a combination of military coups, attempted coups, collapsing democratic transitions, and a surge in jihadist activity stretching from Guinea-Bissau all the way to Benin Republic. The numbers paint a devastating picture. Over 7.6 million people have been forcibly displaced across the region, with women and children accounting for 80% of those uprooted from their homes. But what makes this declaration even more significant is the timing. The emergency is landing at precisely the same moment Niger is imposing stringent new restrictions on goods coming from Nigeria, citing what authorities describe as heightened security concerns. Trucks carrying food items and general cargo now must be offloaded and thoroughly searched at Niger's entry points, a development that signals something far more profound than routine border management. This represents a clear indication that tensions between Abuja and the Alliance of Sahel states are no longer simmering beneath the surface. This isn't about customs procedures anymore. This is about 2 competing visions for West Africa's future clashing head-on in real time, with the entire region caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Nigeria's Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to deploy military troops to Benin Republic after loyalist forces, backed by Nigerian air support and French intelligence, crushed a coup attempt in Cotonou last Sunday. This decision formalizes Nigeria's emerging role as the region's rapid response military power, even as internal insecurity continues to worsen across Nigerian territory. The Nigerian Air Force has categorically denied any wrongdoing in Burkina Faso after the Alliance of Sahel states detained 11 Nigerian military officers and forced their C-130 aircraft to land in Bobo Dioulasso. Nigerian officials insist it was a technical diversion, not an airspace breach. But the message from the Sahel Alliance was unmistakable. The AES is now on maximum alert, and any aircraft entering its airspace without explicit permission will be treated as a potential threat. The events of the past 72 hours are revealing what the Ecowas emergency really means, why tensions with the AES are escalating so rapidly, and how Nigeria has become the epicenter of a regional power struggle that will reshape West Africa's next chapter. Ecowas Commission President Omar Aliou Touré laid out the grim reality during the 55th session of the Mediation and Security Council in Abuja. Rising coup attempts, failed democratic transitions like those witnessed in Guinea-Bissau, weakening democracies across the board, and what critics describe as fraudulent constitutional amendments by the very governments claiming to defend democratic order. Electoral instability is becoming a trigger for violence across West Africa, with expanding terrorist networks and armed criminal groups operating with near impunity. To put things into proper perspective, the declaration acknowledges multiple catastrophic failures. The persistence of military interventions in countries like Guinea-Bissau and Benin Republic just days ago, non-compliance with transition norms in Guinea where a military leader appears to be morphing into a civilian ruler without holding genuine elections, growing erosion of electoral inclusivity across multiple West African states, the expanding influence of terrorist and armed groups, and geopolitical pressures destabilizing member states' diplomacy and cohesion. Commission Chair Touré emphasized something particularly striking. Elections themselves across West Africa have become a major trigger of instability within Ecowas. The region that once celebrated democratic consolidation across nearly 2 decades is now watching elections spark military coups. Entire communities are fleeing violence, terrorism, and state collapse. Schools are being shuttered, especially across Nigeria's troubled northeast. The social fabric of West Africa is fundamentally tearing apart at the seams. But while Ecowas sounds alarm bells and declares emergencies, the alliance that abandoned the bloc entirely is quietly consolidating power behind its closed borders, and their response to this emergency declaration reveals just how deep the regional fracture has become. Hours after Ecowas sounded its regional alarm, Niger announced sweeping new restrictions on goods entering from Nigeria, ordering all miscellaneous goods to be offloaded and thoroughly inspected at the border. This wasn't routine border control. This was political messaging wrapped in security protocol, inserted into a deteriorating regional relationship that appears to be reaching a breaking point. Colonel Mohamed Yakubu, Niger's Customs, Formalities, Coordination Head issued the directive with unmistakable intent. Every category of goods coming from Nigeria, especially those classified as miscellaneous items, must now be unloaded at designated entry points and subjected to the most stringent checks imaginable. Only goods accompanied by valid documentation from recognized ports of discharge will be allowed to proceed into Nigerian territory. Officers stationed at border crossings received instructions to enforce these rules without exception and report any difficulties directly to superiors. This represents a stark divergence from the relationship between Niger and Nigeria during the era of late Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. Under Buhari's administration, Niger and Nigeria functioned almost as Siamese twins, with Nigeria even constructing railway infrastructure to link the two countries together. There existed a genuinely cordial relationship, largely because most of northern Nigeria, especially states like Katsina, Sokoto, and Zamfara, maintained deep familial connections across the border in Niger Republic. These cultural and kinship ties explain why northern Nigerians protested vehemently against any proposed military invasion of Niger back in 2023. Going from that level of brotherhood to this type of confrontational relationship reveals just how catastrophically the unity in West Africa has deteriorated since Bola Tinubu became Nigeria's president. From one diplomatic mess to another, Nigeria and Niger, which functioned as practically one country just a few years ago, are now inspecting each other's goods with suspicion and hostility. This wasn't about security in the traditional sense. This was about economic pressure and geopolitical messaging. Trade between Nigeria and Niger typically spans food commodities, manufactured goods, fuel products, and consumer items worth millions of dollars daily. The cost of moving a standard truckload of miscellaneous goods, usually around 1.5 million Nigerian naira, or approximately $1,500, will now rise dramatically due to delays and extended handling times. These extra costs will inevitably trickle down to Nigerian traders, food vendors, and ordinary people just trying to feed their families. But the real message here was entirely geopolitical. Niger, now firmly aligned with the alliance of Sahel states, was signaling profound distrust toward Nigeria as Abuja deepened its military and political cooperation with Ecowas and France. This was direct retaliation. This was Niger telling Nigeria, "We see what you're doing in Benin Republic. We see your military aircraft over Mali. We see your alliance with France, and we are putting you on notice." And as tensions escalated on the ground, a dramatic incident in Burkina Faso added fuel to an already volatile regional crisis. Burkina Faso confirmed the release of 11 Nigerian military officers detained after AES forces forced a Nigerian C-130 transport aircraft to land in Bobo Dioulasso. While this ended the immediate diplomatic standoff, it only intensified the underlying political confrontation. The incident became the flashpoint that exposed uncomfortable truths about what Nigeria was actually doing in the region. Nigeria's official explanation was straightforward. The aircraft was en route to Portugal and performed what Nigerian military officials called a precautionary emergency landing due to a technical fault. The Nigerian Air Force maintained that the crew followed all standard aviation safety procedures, declared an emergency, and requested the nearest available runway. Nigerian authorities insisted that under customary international law and standard aviation safety protocols, emergency landings are universally protected as a basic humanitarian principle that transcends borders and politics. No country should deny landing rights to a distressed aircraft, regardless of political tensions. But the timing was impossible to ignore. Nigeria had just intervened militarily in Benin Republic. Nigerian airstrikes had just targeted coup plotters in Cotonou. Nigerian troops were already deployed on Beninese soil. And suddenly, a Nigerian military aircraft carrying military personnel accidentally needed to divert over Burkina Faso airspace. The official narrative appeared to crumble under even moderate scrutiny. The AES saw through it immediately. Ouagadougou condemned the incident as a clear violation of airspace and sovereignty. Under international law, and this represents a key technical distinction, military aircraft require diplomatic clearance to enter foreign airspace. They fall outside the civilian aviation framework that typically protects emergency landings. The bloc placed its air defenses on maximum alert, and warned that any further unauthorized aircraft would face immediate neutralization. The reality behind the incident was darker than the official story suggested. Multiple diplomatic sources confirmed that Burkina Faso's aggressive response was driven by frustration, or more accurately, outright anger, over Nigeria's decisive role in foiling the recent coup attempt in Benin Republic. Burkina Faso's revolutionary government had aligned itself completely with Niger and Mali, and views Nigeria's Ecowas leadership as an existential adversary. A successful third coup in Benin would have added a fourth member to the Sahel Alliance. Nigeria stopped that from happening. And Abuja's next move confirmed that Nigeria's military activity outside its borders wasn't accidental. It was deliberate policy, and it was about to be formally codified into law. Nigeria's Senate approved President Tinubu's request to deploy troops to Benin Republic, but the constitutional mechanics reveal something troubling. According to Nigeria's constitution, the president has no authority to unilaterally deploy troops to foreign soil without prior Senate approval. Technically, President Tinubu violated Nigeria's constitution because the Senate had not approved the deployment before it began. Nigerian fighter jets had already conducted airstrikes targeting coup plotters. Nigerian troops were already operating on the ground in Benin. Nigerian military support was already providing security to President Patrice Talon's government. The Senate approval came after the fact, granting parliamentary authorization for a regional security mission that had already commenced. This was emergency consent retroactively applied, the constitutional machinery of Nigeria rubber-stamping a military deployment abroad that had already started. The approval gave Tinubu formal backing to continue what he had already begun. But here's the critical question that exposes the deeper strategy. If the coup in Benin Republic has been completely thwarted, why is the military operation continuing? Why does Nigeria need to maintain a persistent military deployment in a neighboring country that has already restored constitutional order? The answer reveals the true architecture being constructed. Benin Republic's president, Patrice Talon, has lost confidence in segments of his own military. The coup attempt exposed how fragile his grip on the officer corps really is. Talon needs external reassurance. He needs a foreign military presence to guarantee his survival. France was already providing surveillance, observation, and logistical support. But France's direct influence in West Africa is declining precipitously after revolutionary governments in the Sahel expelled French troops. France needed a partner with boots on the ground. Nigeria became that partner. Nigeria's deployment in Benin isn't temporary peacekeeping. It represents the formalization of a new security architecture where Nigeria, backed by France, becomes the active military enforcer of constitutional order in West African states that Ecowas wants to protect. And France's next public announcement removed all remaining ambiguity about who's actually pulling the strings behind this emerging alliance. France officially confirmed what close observers already knew. Paris provided surveillance, observation, and logistical support to help Benin crush the attempted coup, revealing the depth of France's quiet re-entry into West African military affairs. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was France stepping into the open and claiming credit for stopping a coup it helped prevent. French officials described President Emmanuel Macron's coordination with Talon, Tinubu, and regional leaders. The French president orchestrated what Paris diplomatically called a coordination initiative. Upon request from the Benin government, France supplied assistance in areas of surveillance, observation, and logistical support to Beninese military forces. These weren't minor contributions. Intelligence sources described satellite intelligence feeds, real-time observation of communications among coup plotters, and logistical coordination with Nigerian and Beninese forces on the ground. This was France using its advanced technical capabilities to actively shape events. This connects directly to France's broader geopolitical interests across Africa, particularly in West Africa. Stabilizing pro-French governments while simultaneously countering the AES bloc from which French troops were expelled between 2022 and 2023. France had been humiliated across the Sahel. Mali expelled them. Burkina Faso did the same. Niger followed. They're gone from the Sahel, and current indicators suggest permanently. In their place stepped Wagner Group mercenaries and Russian military advisors. Russian flags replaced French flags across capital cities, and French influence evaporated almost overnight. But Benin remained different. President Talon maintained ties to Paris and Benin's geographic location on the coast, with access to the Atlantic Ocean positioned near the Sahel frontier between Nigeria and the AES states, makes it strategically invaluable. By helping President Talon survive the coup attempt, France wasn't just protecting a friendly government. France was defending a crucial foothold, a base of operations, or more accurately, a bridgehead from which to contest AES expansion southward. This Nigerian-French partnership now forms the backbone of Ecowas's new military posture. Together, they're constructing a security structure based on military intervention, rapid response deployment, and the use of force to prevent what they define as unconstitutional changes of power. But while Paris celebrated its return to relevance, Nigeria faced a growing regional credibility problem, starting with its explanation for the aircraft incident in Burkina Faso. The events of the past 72 hours have made the new geopolitical alignment unmistakable. Ecowas, Nigeria, and France stand solidly on one side. The alliance of Sahel states stands firmly on the other. Each is moving with military agency and political certainty. Each is consolidating power. Each is preparing for what increasingly looks like an extended regional struggle. ECOWAS's state of emergency declaration, Nigeria's continued deployment in Benin Republic, France's confirmed involvement, and Niger's border restrictions all point toward a structural breakdown of regional cooperation that now appears irreversible. The region is dividing into two competing political and security models. On one side, ECOWAS and Nigeria are building a security architecture explicitly based on defending constitutional order, maintaining democratic norms, and preventing coups through collective military action. On the other side, the AES Alliance, led by revolutionary military leaders in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, is building a counter-project based on rejecting Western interference, reasserting sovereignty, and pursuing security autonomy through joint military coordination. The AES represents something genuinely unusual in the contemporary African context. These aren't typical military juntas clinging to power while promising eventual democracy. These are military governments making deliberate ideological choices to pursue a fundamentally different model of governance and international relations. They've rejected France categorically. They've rejected ECOWAS sanctions. They've aligned with Russia. They're building joint military forces. They're coordinating foreign policy. And they're framing themselves as anti-imperialist leaders, defending African sovereignty against Western interference. To Pan-African audiences and those who view Western intervention as a historical curse on the continent, the AES represents a genuine break with that past. To ordinary people across the Sahel, AES leaders promise security, stability, and an end to foreign domination. But this revolutionary project is now clashing directly with ECOWAS's defensive consolidation. Nigeria and France are actively stepping in to prevent AES expansion. The Benin coup attempt represented an opportunity for AES to add a fourth member and consolidate a coastal presence. Nigeria and France thwarted that ambition decisively. Now airspace is being contested. Border trade is weaponized. Military deployments are becoming permanent. And every incident, every aircraft diversion, every diplomatic signal is being read as preparation for a longer confrontation. West Africa is entering a period where border crises and military movements could become trigger points for a confrontation that fundamentally reshapes the region's geopolitical map. As both sides consolidate power and harden their positions, West Africa faces a reality where every decision, every movement, every diplomatic gesture will be interpreted as preparation for an extended struggle. The emergency has been declared not because Ecowas is responding effectively to the jihadist crisis ravaging the region, but because the bloc recognizes that the regional order it constructed over decades is now under existential challenge from a force it cannot easily contain or control. The stage is set, the sides have been drawn, and the West African region stands at a crossroads that will determine its trajectory for the next generation.